So 2020 is not just a presidential election. There are 35 Senate seats also up for grabs, and some people argue they're as equally as important as the presidency because the party that controls the Senate has a huge sway on things like Supreme Court nominations and can ultimately determine the balance of power in Congress as a whole. If Democrats capture the Senate, they'll most likely hold the House as well. And if Joe Biden's president, they have a trifecta in federal government. If Trump wins and there's a Republican Senate and a Democratic House, we continue to have a divided government. And in a Republican best case scenario, we could have all three chambers go to the Republicans. So we're going to start here going left to right. We're going to start with the safe Democratic seat of Oregon. This seat's not really going to flip under any circumstance. Alaska, and we'll go Idaho, Wyoming, and Montana. Currently in Montana, Governor Steve Bullock, who's the current Democratic governor, fairly popular, especially for a Democrat in Montana, is running for the state Senate seat there. If we go back to 2014, Montana went to the Republicans by 17 points. Now keep in mind, again, this was a low turnout election overall, high Republican turnout, so the numbers are obviously going to favor them in a lot of areas where they normally don't. But if we want to look at a high turnout reference, we can go to Montana's 2018 Senate election, which had current Senator Jon Tester winning by a little bit over 3 points over his Republican opponent. Now, he was already an incumbent and a fairly popular senator in Montana, not to mention this was a Democratic wave year. Had this been a presidential year, this race could have probably tilted the other way toward the Republicans. So for that alone, and the fact that normally incumbents in Montana don't usually lose, we're going to put this as a likely Republican seat just for now. Because Steve Bullock could definitely chip away at margins. He's definitely going to get a higher share of the vote than Joe Biden is in Montana. That's for sure. But overall, it could be fairly close. But I think the Republicans will handily win it, at least for now. So we move down south to Colorado. Last time in 2014, Cory Gardner, the incumbent, won a upset victory against the incumbent in that Senate race, Mark Udall, by around a point or so. Again, New York Times doesn't update anything, so I don't know how accurate those numbers are, but it's somewhere, given a point or two or point something. But this, again, was a low turnout election, and Cory Gardner did very well in the Denver suburbs, an area that if we go to 2018, which is a more high turnout election, we'll just go to the governor's race there. If we look there, the suburbs took a huge, heavy swing to the left in a high Democratic turnout election, which makes sense. But again, if Cory Gardner is to actually win this time around, he's going to have to win places up here. He's going to have to increase and probably get a similar margin in El Paso County. I think Trump got 56% of the vote there in 2016. He's going to have to get probably this same amount, if not more, and then chip away at Democratic margins in all these population centers. But based on polling and the fact that he might go up against former popular governor John Hickenlooper on the Democratic side, I think Colorado is probably going to be lean blue. And another reason why I think it will be lean blue is because Colorado has been trending very heavily toward the Democrats as of late. And in 2018, of course, they swept statewide government. And they seem to only be going further in that direction. So I don't see, even if Trump were to carry Colorado somehow, which I think is unlikely at this point, but if he does, I still think Cory Gardner will lose his seat. Moving on to New Mexico. New Mexico, we're going to put as safe blue. 2014, the last time this seat was up. Tom Udall, the incumbent, won this seat by around 10 points during a Republican wave year. So this is going to be safe. No contest there. The state of Arizona is very interesting. Martha McSally, who actually lost, we'll just go back and take a look at this, but Martha McSally originally lost her Arizona Senate race back in 2018. She was appointed by current Governor Doug Ducey to fill John McCain's empty seat, and the special election is being held in 2020. So all the polls have her Democratic opponent and most likely Democratic nominee. I don't know if they actually had their state Senate primary there, but Mark Kelly is basically the Democratic opponent there. He's ahead in every poll by at least 3 points. Martha McSally is not a very popular incumbent senator. Again, she lost her first race, and this was a Democratic wave year, but she lost by a substantial margin. This wasn't close. This was around 3 points. And she lost in Maricopa County, which of course is a county she's going to have to win in order to get to retain her seat. And then she'll be up again in 2022. So it would be very unlikely she holds that seat, considering if Trump wins 2020, that will probably be a Democratic wave year as well. So Maricopa County is very important. Tucson and this general area is going to be very important. Of course, you're not going to win down there, but you can chip away at margins. So based on the fact that Martha McSally is a fairly unpopular incumbent, even if Trump wins the state, as of right now, I'm going to put Arizona as tilt Democrat. Mark Kelly just has a very slight edge in the state. He's out fundraised Martha McSally, I think, in every quarter so far. So it looks like it's going to be his seat to win. But again, we're still months away from election. We're kind of dealing with a crisis right now, and a lot could change. Alright, so all of these states down here we're going to put as safe red. Kansas is going to be likely red. Chris Kobach, who is the Republican Senate nominee, or at least leading Republican Senate nominee, lost his race for governor in the state of Kansas, which is why Kansas currently has a Democratic governor. We could take a quick look at that. But he is not very popular in the state of Kansas, judging by, of course, the fact that he lost. But he was considered a little bit too right in the state of Texas, which is, you'd think, is quite bizarre because Texas is a safe, Kansas. It's very late. Kansas is a safe red state, so especially on the presidential level. So in a 2020 race, I think with very high turnout, and considering this is a Senate race and not a governor's race, this is going to be your representative in national government. I think Chris Kobach's going to win this state, but probably by a likely margin. So he'll capture that seat. Texas, John Cornyn will probably win his seat by a likely margin too. If we go back to 2014, John Cornyn won an absolute landslide against his Democratic opponent. This was a Republican wave year, but even for a Republican wave year, Texas, he won places like Harris County by over 10 points, nearly won Dallas County, won a solid victory in Tarrant County, where Fort Worth is, and near San Antonio by 14 points. So he was winning areas that Republicans on the national level struggle to. Trump lost Dallas by, I think, way over 20 points. He only held on to Tarrant County by around 9. So John Cornyn obviously performed better, but again, this was a Republican wave year. I think he'll capture the seat by more than Trump will capture the state in 2020, but probably not by much. Let's just say, for hypothetical, that Trump takes the state of Texas by, he improves his margin. Let's say he gets 11 points. John Cornyn would probably get somewhere around 13, 14. Moving on, we're just going to fill in all these safe seats. I think Mississippi is going to be safe this time around because Cindy Hyde-Smith is the incumbent now. She's been in office for quite a little bit. And this is a 2020, this is going to be a presidential election. So I think that's going to be a safe seat. South Carolina for now is going to be a safe seat. So is West Virginia. So we're going to go up to Minnesota. I'm going to put Minnesota as a likely Democratic for now. Tina Smith is going to be up for re-election. She's up here somewhere. She did not win as much as Amy Klobuchar did in the 2018 election, but she won a fairly handled victory by around 11 points. Now, this is going to be a higher turnout election, and there's going to be more Republicans voting, but I still see the seat staying in her column by around 7 points. Even if Trump somehow captures Minnesota, I think Tina Smith will win it by, at worst for her, a lean margin, maybe 5 points or so, because she is somewhat popular in the state of Minnesota. Iowa is going to be lean for Joni Ernst. She's not a very popular senator, but I think the fact that the state will go to Trump by likely maybe 10 points or so will carry her over and give her maybe a 3 or 4 point victory. If we go back to 2014, she won Iowa pretty handily, but again, that was a low turnout election, high turnout for Republicans. She won it by around 9 points. I think this time it'll be a lot closer, maybe like 4 points, depending on her opponent. Illinois is going to be safe blue. Michigan is sort of interesting. So in 2018, Michigan was a lot closer than anyone would have thought. Debbie Stabenow, who was kind of barely held on to her seat in a wave year, she kept it by 7 points. But John James, the Republican, got 45.8%. So if we go look at that more detailed. The only areas he really failed is around Detroit. He could have increased his margins in Wayne County and in rural areas. He kind of lacked in rural areas. If he'd done better, he probably could have had a shot at taking up the seat. Now, I think the current senator, I think his name's Gary Peters or something like that, is not that well known in the state, but for now we're going to put Michigan as lean until any other polls suggest otherwise. I think Michigan is definitely going to be close on the presidential level. If Trump wins it, it's probably going to be within a point. If Biden wins it, it might be about a point or so. I think it's going to be a really, really close race. So now we go down to Georgia. David Perdue, there's 2 Senate seats up for grabs here. David Perdue, who's the incumbent, he's going to win his seat probably by a likely margin. But there's also a special election with another incumbent, Kelly Loeffler, who recently was enveloped in scandal when she was basically caught insider trading back in January. Due to the information she knew about the pandemic, she sold her stocks pretty quickly and took a lot of heat for that. And I think she's a very weak incumbent to run in Georgia. So for now, I'm going to put that as lean because Georgia is getting closer, unfortunately. Democrats are making huge gains in the Atlanta suburbs, particularly Cobb and Gwinnett County, and of course Fulton County where Atlanta is as well. So for now, we're going to put that as lean unless the polls show otherwise. If Doug Collins somehow wins the nomination for the Republicans, actually, that's not really how it works in Georgia. They actually have a jungle primary, so the two with the top votes, the 2 candidates with the top votes, basically advance on. So if Doug Collins, if for some reason it's Doug Collins and Kelly Loeffler, then it's in Republican hands either way. But it's probably going to be Kelly Loeffler and some other Democrat just because she is the opponent. But if somehow Doug Collins does rise out of this, he'll probably win it by a likely margin. He's further to the right of Kelly Loeffler, but he's not scandal-ridden, and I think ultimately that will fare well for him in Georgia. He'll probably take it by 7 or 8 points. North Carolina with Thom Tillis is interesting because he's not that popular either. But North Carolina is a much redder state as well. So for now, we're going to put this in the tilt Republican column. Again, Cal Cunningham is, I guess, a decent opponent. He's a moderate Democrat. But I don't know if he's the type of Democrat to excite the base. I think Trump ultimately will win North Carolina by around 4 or 5 points. I think he'll make up his margins. I think Joe will also increase Hillary's margins. Hillary only got 46% of the vote in the state. I think he can get 47, but I see Trump getting around 50, 51, maybe even 52. 52 is probably a bit too high. So, I think Trump could probably win it by around 3 or 4 points again. But I think he'll break 50 this time around. Moving on to Virginia. Virginia is going to be safe blue. Mark Warner is a very, very popular incumbent. If we go back to 2014, though, that was certainly not the case. He was almost ousted by Republican Ed Gillespie, who also made a run for governor in 2017 and did much worse than this. Lost by 9 points. But this time he almost had an upset victory against Mark Warner. And if you look at the areas he did well in, Loudoun County, he actually won Loudoun County. And, of course, he broke 40% in Fairfax and Prince William. So that's a very, very big deal for a Republican. I don't know, I just refreshed. But that's a very big deal for a Republican in Virginia. However, this is going to be a high turnout election. Mark Warner is very popular. There's no really well-known Republicans. So we're going to put it as safe blue. So the other seats are going to be safe blue. Delaware, Chris Coons is going to win his seat pretty handily. New Jersey, Rhode Island, Maine, And that just leaves New Hampshire and Maine. Sorry, that's Massachusetts. So that just leaves New Hampshire and Maine. So if we go to New Hampshire, Jeanne Shaheen actually is a somewhat popular, she's fairly popular, incumbent senator from New Hampshire. I actually think Trump has a very decent shot at winning New Hampshire. In fact, I actually favor him to win in New Hampshire, but by around under a point. But Jeanne Shaheen is fairly popular in the state of New Hampshire, and again, even in 2014, even in a wave year for Republicans, she still won the seat by around 3 points against former Senator Scott Brown, who's actually from Massachusetts. He was the senator in Massachusetts before Elizabeth Warren was. So we're going to put this seat as leans Democrat. I mean, if Joe Biden carries New Hampshire, it could be likely. Now, finally, we come down to the last state on our list, Maine. Susan Collins has plummeted in approval in the state of Maine. I don't really know why. I guess her Kavanaugh vote and the vote to not impeach Donald Trump, or convict, I should say, Donald Trump, probably really hurt her in a blue state like Maine. Maine's not as blue as it used to be, but there's still a large liberal progressive base here. And this is going to be a high turnout election. So if we go back to 2014, Susan Collins absolutely destroyed whoever Bellows was. Complete and utter victory. Even back in 2018, Susan Collins won every county in Maine, and that was again when Obama won Maine, almost won every county in Maine too, and he won it by a safe margin. So this is quite a contrast, but however, the political landscape has changed drastically in the state of Maine. And based on her low approval ratings, I'm probably going to put the state of Maine as tilt Democrat because I don't know how close it's actually going to get. We still have very little data from the state. But anyway, guys, this is what I think the Senate is probably going to look like in 2020 as of right now. 51 seats for the Republicans, 49 for the Democrats. If Trump wins, if there's a tie, Mike Pence breaks it, that's 52. If not, the Republican Senate will provide a check for a Joe Biden presidency. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that video. I'll be making more videos like this. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel. I'll probably continue my swing state series. So thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.